Harambee House, where senior reporter Rita Tinina is standing by with the very latest on the government's scorecard. Rita, we have had a lot coming from government. Anything new coming from Harambee House today?
Well, it is the first briefing by 4 cabinet secretaries who make up the first cluster of cabinet secretaries to issue their briefing, just concluded a few minutes ago. Remember, this is something that was agreed during the cabinet retreat in Nanyuki. President Uhuru Kenyatta, during his national address, the state address in Parliament, also followed up on the same issue. So basically this week, beginning today until Thursday, cabinet secretaries will be giving press briefings, just illustrating their achievements in the last 1 year, as well as laying out their strategies or priorities for the coming year. This morning, the first one to issue her statement was Professor Judy Wahungu, the cabinet secretary for Environment, Water and Natural Resources. She told the press members who are gathered here that her ministry has managed to increase access to water by 2%. That is from 51% to 53%. She also says that the country's forest cover stands at 7%, although this is still below the target of at least 10%. In terms of legislation, she says that the Wildlife Conservation and Management Bill is ready. The Water Bill is also ready. There are challenges. One of them, of course, a major issue in the country at the moment is the issue of poaching. She says this is a crisis. She says she is blaming the increase in cases of poaching on what she says is sophistication of the equipment that the poachers have that KWS rangers do not have. The second person to give her statement to the press this morning was the Lands Principal Secretary, who was representing the Lands Urban Development and Housing Cabinet Secretary, Charity Ngilu, who is not in the country. And she spoke of the plans by the ministry to issue 1 million title deeds. This year alone, the ministry plans to issue at least 3 million title deeds. The Permanent Principal Secretary said this year alone they will be issuing 1 million title deeds already. 139,000 title deeds have been issued. There are also plans to digitize the title center in Ruaraka, and there are also plans to introduce new title deeds that will have counterfeit features. From the Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries Permanent Secretary, Cicely Karaoke, she spoke of the plans by the government to put at least 1 million acres under irrigation. So far, she says 40,000 acres are already under irrigation. She spoke of the model Galana farm, which is expected to be under maize production soon. She says it's almost up and running. On the issue of provision of fertilizer, she said the government provided at least 180,000 metric tons of fertilizer, and this enabled the government to meet at least 30% of the fertilizer needs by farmers. The last cabinet secretary to give a brief earlier on this afternoon was Adan Mohammed, the Industrialization and Enterprise Development Cabinet Secretary. She spoke of plans by the government to improve foreign direct investment in the country, to reduce the cost of doing business, to increase the manufacturing capacity of the country, to ensure that the country then reduces imports into the country. Edith, as I said, this was just the first cluster of cabinet secretaries. This is something that will continue up until Thursday. Tomorrow, the second cluster of cabinet secretaries, which will be chaired by Mining Cabinet Secretary Najib Balala, will be issuing their scorecards for their ministries, just highlighting what they have been up to in the last 1 year and their priorities for the coming year. Edith.
Rita, a lot of what you've mentioned, and indeed what the cabinet secretaries did give, was information of plans they intend to have. Very little coming about what they actually have done. What is the intended purpose of this? Because there's a lot of arguments saying that they could have easily put this information on their websites. Well,
they say this is something that the president and the cabinet secretaries agreed in Nanyuki, so they have to do it, issue their statements here today. Also, throughout the week, the president has instructed that cabinet secretaries should be available to media houses which would wish to have one-on-one interviews or in-depth interviews on various issues with the cabinet secretaries. So this is just a beginning. It was, as you noticed, a very brief session. The cabinet secretaries basically giving highlights of what their ministries have achieved in the last 1 year and some what priorities are in the next in the coming year. There was a session where members of the press could ask questions, but they insist that in case there are issues that members of the press would like to go into details with any of the cabinet secretaries throughout this week, they are under instructions that they should be available to members of the press. Edith.
Well, thank you very much, Rita Tinina, coming to us live from Harambee House. We'll be back with her later in our subsequent bulletins with, of course, more information from that briefing.